Welcome in, welcome back. Welcome to Stream-of-Unconsciousness, where the subject's made up and the words don't matter. As always, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being a subscriber if you are. Feel free to subscribe, or even better, like or comment on the video. The engagement is certainly appreciated. I love to talk to people about this stuff and wax philosophic about the crazy things that I'm into. So, feel free. And with that, we'll get right into the video. So, having recently completed a painting video for a figure of Ellen Ripley from Alien, I thought I would go into a video about the backgrounds that I have done. Initially, when I started doing miniature photography, I was always looking for the perfect background to just sort of display the mini, and by perfect, I mean whatever I had on hand that didn't have writing on it. So usually it was like the blank side of a cardboard box, or something covered with printer paper to create a smoothish surface to photograph against. Not extremely visually interesting, although I know there are a lot of people that take their miniature photography and basically just completely remove the backgrounds. But I thought it'd be more interesting to have something else in the background. About a year ago, I guess, maybe a little more, we received some kind of medium-ish, I guess, piece of furniture in the mail, buildable furniture. And as we were cleaning up the box and supplies, my wife noticed that there were these plastic end caps. And hard plastic, they're kind of nice. And she was like, "Hey, you have these little triangular end caps. Maybe you might need them for something, one of your projects." I thought, oh, that might be interesting. Let's take a look at that. So originally I had a thought. I do have a number of Blake 7 miniatures that I'm still in the process of painting. And I thought, wouldn't it be neat if I just made, a little vignette of each character on the bridge of the Liberator. And the reason I didn't do that is that's, at least 6 of these, and the way I display my miniatures doesn't really allow for a lot of extra shelf space for vignettes. I wish it did. I would love to make much more. But I originally just used it the way it was. I had a figure painted of Travis from the same company, Space Commander Travis. So the original pictures I took of him were just, standing in this black space. And, it works, but I didn't care for it all that much. I would have preferred something a little more detailed. So I ended up working on a background specifically for the sci-fi type figures. And this is a little bit more complicated than when I started. When I started, it didn't have things like the giant silver window in the right-hand corner. It didn't have a lot of these extra panels and things. But it did have some of them. But I felt it needed a little more visual interest. But I think, again, speaking of visual interest, that this makes a much more exciting background than the blank, plain black. It gives a sort of a generic space station feel. It gives you an idea of, what this kind of thing, an idea of what the miniature would look like in their native habitat. Not that necessarily the First Doctor spends a lot of time on greasy space stations, although really, Doctor Who did spend a lot of time on greasy space stations, let's be honest. But I think it makes a much more visually interesting background. And I had done Travis, obviously the Doctor. I've got a few other sci-fi miniatures that I had taken pictures of using this background, especially after I have updated it. And I thought, after I had completed the first round of the addition of detail for the sci-fi background, I thought, okay, I've got a nice sci-fi background. So what else do I need? I've got lots more of those plastic end caps. And what occurred to me that next was a fantasy type setting. So initially this was just some painted, a little bit of painted background and a little bit of ground cover and a little bit of static grass that or not static grass, but loose flocking, really, that I had glued down in such a way that you can't even tell it was flocking. It just looks like painted gravel almost. I recently updated it and added some more shrubs and bushes and trees because I think that it really needed it. It was very, very basic, but I didn't update the paint so much other than to add a couple of birds in the background, but I really think it pops better now with the addition of the bushes and the trees. I think it gives it a much more visually, again, to reuse words over and over, a much more visually interesting background for the mini to stand in. Technically, he should probably be in some kind of stone corridor because of his base, but I think it sets off the mini much better. And again, much better than just having the bare basic blank black plastic backgrounds. So the next one that I did, I had some basically rubber brick work, like a whole roll of it for like model trains that I'd had it for, oh my God, decades really. I'd bought it at the time when I was like, oh, I'm going to make bases out of that, and then I never got around to it. And I thought, you know what, being bricks, they might actually make a good brick wall. So I attached some and cut it to scale, cut it to size, and then I printed out some various little bits and bobs to attach to the brick wall so that it's not just, you know, a blank brick wall. Repainted some of the bricks, printed out some little newspapers to crumple up and leave on the ground. And I think that does a perfectly serviceable sort of modern alleyway. I really like the look of this. This is, of the first three that I did, this was the one that I was happy with on completion. I haven't made any adjustments to this since I made it, unlike the other two. So, got some movie posters, got the dead end sign for the alleyway. I think that works pretty well. I was pretty happy with this when I completed it. It took me a little bit to dial in the size of the posters and things, and they're still a little bit oversized. That's pretty big newspaper, but I think it still works. And I was actually painting a figure. I had a figure that, again, another figure that I had for decades that I had found via someone on One List Sculpting back on the old Yahoo One List pages, and because she sort of looked vaguely Cossack-ish to me, I ended up using some baking soda on her base to make it look like snow, because I thought that would look really, really good. And then realized that I did not have a background with snow on it. So I'd initially done the pictures of her with the fantasy-esque sort of woodland tree look. But I thought, you know what, if I'm going to continue to do that kind of thing, I really, really should make a background that looks like snow. So I had these trees. These trees were I'd originally used a couple of those on the fantasy-esque one, and they had a little bit of white paint on them to indicate sort of snowy spruces. And I didn't like the look, so I'd replaced all those, but I thought they'd be perfect for this. So again, I ended up doing a lot of baking soda and glue and water, mostly. Painted a little bit on the background, including some of the trees and the moon there, and then basically added baking soda and glue and water until I got the snowbanks that I really was going for. Took a little bit to dial that in, because of the way I was doing it. The snowbanks were a little more challenging to get the way I wanted them than I had initially intended. But I think it works out reasonably well. I think it gives a good snowy background feel. Looks good for some photos. And it's good. It's got a good display. So there you have it. I realize in taking some pictures more recently that what I did not have yet was a sort of modern building, like not an alleyway, but more of like an internal, like an old Victorian library, or something of that nature, which I thought might be interesting. And I do have those are way too close to the camera, aren't they? I'm going to try to do what I'm doing. Something like that, where you can do sort of Victorian, maybe steampunk, but something that is sort of more of an inside a building kind of a picture, but not modern. I think the modern alleyway gets the modern stuff pretty well. So I might be working on those again. I do have extra plastic caps to I have at least 3 more. So I've got some time to dial some of these things in. But there you have it. There's the backgrounds that I have made for my photographic attempts at displaying the miniatures that I paint and sculpt. Actually, of this group, 2 of these are actually my sculpts. If you would like, guess in the comments which 2 are mine. The winner gets a thank you. Anyway, guess in the comments which 2 you think are actually my sculpts. As always, appreciate you watching, appreciate you coming in. Thanks as always for all the support. Again, feel free to like and subscribe and comment, and we will see you next time.